Pressed. Joining us for a fantastic Monday, we've got a full panel of analysts. Cheta Nwaeze is back from his wanderings. Chickster, good morning. How are you doing? But just temporarily.
Yeah,
you know you're off again. It's okay. Let them do rush you. More people in. We've got Ayo Esho, aka Esho1, in the studio. Good morning, Ayo.
Good morning. How are you doing?
Fantastic. Great to have you with us. And as usual, we have got Fred Alison. Good morning, Fred.
Good morning. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you here. And of course, Valentine and myself are going to go through the stories this morning. But do remember to join us in our conversation.
Yes, join us by sending a message through WhatsApp. Our WhatsApp number is 0809-444-0981. Use the hashtag on Twitter. Use Freshly Pressed 981 when sending a tweet to us at Smooth981FM. On YouTube, where we're streaming live, you can watch us and see our wonderful faces in the studio. And also leave a comment there. Type in the search box Smooth981FM Lagos. Hit the subscribe button so you can know whenever we come on live.
Okay, let's move on with things now. Cheta, you're going to take us, please, through the first story. Now, we've got a headline from the Punch newspaper that reads, 2019, the senators and reps insist that Buhari should sign the electoral bill. And essentially, the summary of this rather lengthy story is that they feel after much pressure and public pressure, or they say blackmail, really, by the public, saying you've got to pass this bill, that it still hasn't been signed by the president. And they say they hear whispers that he may not sign it. They haven't officially reconvened the National Assembly, by the way. But what are your thoughts on this story?
Well, while plenary has not reconvened, I think it's important to stress that committee work has been ongoing, and
yes,
the Joint Committee of Appropriations have kind of approved the bulk of INEC's requested budgets. INEC, if memory serves us, had a budget, had requested a 189.2 billion naira to conduct the next elections. Any way you look at it, that's like $500 million. It's not
money.
Small money. The committee has approved 143 billion. But they have reservations. Key reservation is the fact that the president has not yet signed the amended electoral act. And here's where the rub is. If the president doesn't sign the amended electoral act, and at least two major newspapers have said that he doesn't intend to sign. If he doesn't sign, then I was about to say bill. It's a bill. The budget is sort of nonsense, because a good proportion of the budget is about procurement. Procurement in order to make the amended electoral act make sense. So, key provisions of the amended electoral act: full biometrics, the making use of smart card readers. Election in Abia, which went to the Supreme Court. Why Alex Otti lost that was the fact that the smart card, the judges at the Supreme Court said that, well, smart card readers are not less amenable to fraud, less to him back then sign and it. So the silence, I mean, we know our country. When people start flying kites such as that, one is testing the waters. What I don't
Yep.
I accept that, yes, we should be patient. September 25 is what? 22 days away. Immediately. I expect, yes, we did have become extremely cynical.
Understood.
I like that first order of business will be trying to pitch to when that falls a less signing.
Interesting, and see if that comes to pass. But ranges by which they've lending to the real sector, they say that it appears to be a defensive strategy against loan failures, and that in fact the banks are investing more in treasury instruments which themselves aren't high yield, but that seems to be a safer direction for them. I don't know, what are your thoughts?
It just speaks to the usual cycle. We're coming to election cycle, so there's a lot of uncertainty, you know. uncertainty in regards to even if the current government goes through and they're elected, what are the policies that will be put in place? And it's just the economy isn't doing great too. It speaks to that. The economy isn't doing great. So if you're lending to businesses, are you putting yourself at risk? And then with the uncertainty with the elections, if things aren't up and running when the cycle comes around, then you're also putting yourself more at risk. And then think about it. During the election cycle, money's going to come in for elections. So that's a safer bet, So why risk, against something that is safer for the bank? So I just see that that's probably what's in play. And it's usually the normal cycle just before an election. When we get like a new electoral cycle.
Yes, a new movement. Very interesting, actually. When I took a look at this, I also wondered if there was anything to do with lending in sort of the general oil sector, because we know that banks have become a little bit more risk averse in that direction as well, because they did take a hit not too long ago. But interesting to see how many businesses are impacted, or how the entire country has to sort of hurricane-proof itself.
I know, we just have to have like a standstill type of, stance for this period.
Do you think we'll get to a place where we don't have to sort of shield ourselves from the sort of political instability?
The interesting thing is that we're not considering other inflows. Remittance into the economy last year was 22 billion.
Okay.
From diasporas and people, So if we're focusing on other inflows of income, other than just what's coming from the biggest bidder, which is the federal government, then we'll be able to find other sources where we can use to prove through things like this.
Thank you very much for that, Fred. I appreciate that. Ayo, hi, good morning. Going to move over to you for this next one.
Good morning.
Very quickly, it is really a health concern. Fresh concerns over a cholera break in Kastina from the Punch newspaper. Now, very specific local government areas, and it's again pointing to what seems to be sort of simple things, healthcare awareness, telling people, listen, the rainwater, yes, it's supposed to be pure, but it can be contaminated on the way down. What are your thoughts on this, and really how it's being handled if they know that these outbreaks tend to happen periodically in the same areas? The casualty numbers are quite worrying, to say the least. 15 lives already claimed, 24 others are hospitalized.
So, this is 2018, and we're still battling this, and it shows, like you said yourself, this particular outbreaks are happening in a particular area of Nigeria, okay, and it's directly proportional to the education rate. Okay, now if you read through the news, you see that they felt like rainwater was the most, shall I say, most cleanest kind of water for them. Not putting into consideration that it could get contaminated by coming. In fact, you'll carry bacteria, viruses, different kind of chemicals. You remember acid rain, which was an example of what we used to have back then. And
interestingly, people tend to collect rainwater, and when it drips off
barrels
roofs
and all that. But back then, growing up, we gathered water, okay? We gathered rainwater, but it was mostly for washing up.
I still
Cheta,
gather
some of us
rainwater.
actually grew up that way, okay?
Yeah.
Just saying.
I mean,
okay, so
taking a shower under rainwater was always very interesting.
But then it was for
You grew
external.
up in Warri.
I did not
I
grow
grew
up
up in
in
Lagos.
I grew up in township.
I did not
I
grow up in
grew up in Lagos. We collect rainwater here too.
I grew up in Lagos, okay?
Lagos is a big ghetto.
Okay,
Well,
that's great.
So yeah, but then you use it for cleaning of maybe materials and washing of clothes and all that, not for drinking. That's at least we understood that down here. So for them to be drinking this water, it means that they need to be reorientated. There has to be some form of re-education, and I think the best way to pass this kind of messages are probably through the clerics of that area and through the leaders of the community, not just through someone wearing a suit or someone wearing a good jacket and all that. They need to get down to their level to explain to them why this is not good. I hope this doesn't reoccur again, okay, because this is becoming too much. I wish them all the best over there.
Thank you very much. And for everyone else who didn't realize, you really shouldn't be drinking rainwater just as is. Please boil, filter, keep yourself safe. Up next, very quickly, this story. SERAP is suing INEC over Ekiti vote buyers. They're suing the body over the electoral body's failure to do anything about the allegations of vote buying. They're actually seeking an order of the courts to compel both INEC and its chairman, Professor Mahmood Yakubu, to instruct security agencies to make reports of their investigations into allegations of vote buying. Fred, what I want to know is how important do you think this move is? Is it important that proper investigations are carried out? Because right now it feels as though it's just being swept under the rug, like, okay, it happened, but everybody did it, so let's not look too closely.
Yeah. No, I feel it's very important because once we start doing things like this on the record, we have it first on the record, right? Before we start dealing with curving or even approach to curving this, because this is obviously a standard now that people just buy votes and expect. And it was, I read some other places where it said people waited for the highest bidder before they voted. So it's like, it's a standard of voting. So how can we approach this? This is one of the ways we start dealing with it and start making it clear that this isn't really the approach for us to have the best governance that we can have in any environment. So in the short run, for the voters that are selling their votes, it makes sense. But 3 years later, you asked for it.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that, Fred. We'll keep it moving. We've got a couple of messages that have come through.
MI from Akoka sent this one. Says the rumors of the president not signing is rather curious. However, to play the advocate, it's just not about signing the Electoral Act. The devil is in the details. The line items and core components should be properly scrutinized so we can get a good return in such huge investment in our democracy. Can the government get this over with and keep it moving, please? Thanks.
Yeah, that's kind of a request from all of us.
Yeah.
Thank you. It would be excellent. We appreciate it. But let's move on into our next set of stories.
We have a story from Premium Times newspaper, Cheta. The Nigerian soldiers' death toll has been rising according to this report, and they said the soldiers were attacked at their base in Zari village, north of Maiduguri and near the border Republic of Benin. Just last month, soldiers were protesting. They protested in Maiduguri, and so we heard about how the soldiers were arrested, and the army or the military tried to beat down that news or that story, saying that they were protesting just internal issues really. But we know that the soldiers have been really, it seems, scared to be deployed to such tension-filled areas. What's your take on this death toll and how the military is reacting to it?
First things first, God rest the dead.
Amen.
It's always very sad when we have the slaughter of people who are committed to defending all of us. Having said that, the pattern among the military brass is absolutely disgusting. I mean, this pattern has been on repeat for quite a long time now. And the one that I will never forget is Chimda Hedima, the Air Force pilot whose plane was shot down in 2013, and he actually took out some Boko Haram members. His co-pilot died. He was captured, and the military denied him. He was beheaded on camera by Boko Haram. This pattern has remained. It's whenever something negative happens, there's an initial denial. Then when it becomes obvious that the denial is a lie, they ignore the problem.
But is it outright denial or damage control? Trying not to inflame reporting of such stories.
First, denial. It never happened.
And I wonder why they do that.
Then, when it becomes obvious, either they ignore the problem or they try to do some, as you call it, damage control.
Do you think?
But the damage has already been done by the initial denial, and nobody seems to think of the damage it does to the psyche of those soldiers in the field.
Yeah, exactly.
Some
We're
of
still
them
being
have
sent
been
back
on rotation. In standard procedures, you don't do rotations last for between 6 to 9 months. Some of them have been in the field for 4 years at the minimum. Now, juxtapose this with the fact that recently some soldiers mutinied. We saw them. We covered that story here when they mutinied at Maiduguri Airport. Then last week, both Reuters and the Associated Press reported that the government is forcing people back home from refugee camps. When you juxtapose these two with this, we have a really bad situation on our hands. And you consider that the president is in China. He did not a mention was made about this from either him
or a remark.
Presidency.
Yeah.
Instead, as the story points out, he actually was boasting to Nigerian residents in China that we have
recorded
we
successes.
have recorded successes against Boko Haram. The fact is, we have ceded large portions of Borno and Yobe states to Boko Haram, especially the Al-Banawi faction, who effectively now run a government, including collecting taxes. We can pretend all we like, but effectively some parts of Nigeria have fallen off the map. That is the reality, and until we accept that reality, we don't even have a chance of recovering.
Thank you very much, Cheta, for that detailed analysis on that story. Vanguard newspaper has this next one. Akure killings. Police NSCDC bicker over alleged shielding of suspected killer. According to this story, Ayo, two security agencies in Ondo State are at war over the whereabouts of a suspect who allegedly shot dead a woman in Akure, the Ondo State capital, last week. Now, the police command is accusing the NSCDC, the Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps, of shielding the suspect, who they said is an NSCDC officer. The NSCDC now is claiming that the suspect is not attached to the state command. Now, my question is, even if he's not attached to the state command, as far as if they verify that it's truly an NSCDC officer, doesn't it fall on, the commanding officer of the state really to, does his office supersede the need to, just address a criminal situation, really? And if they can have access to this person, the suspects, really, shouldn't they provide them to the police?
I remember 2012 when this whole debate about arming the NSCDC officials was going on. A lot of people were like, are they really well trained enough to handle weapons and all that? Because another thing that is very scary here is the lady was actually going to bury a particular man who was also shot dead by another allegedly.
That led to a protest that we reported recently.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this is becoming we're having too much of this in the news, and it's becoming alarming. It's ridiculous if what your excuse is going to be is not attached to our own department or our own state's command. The fact is, there's a suspect at large. I don't care if it's a military man or whatsoever. There
should be concerted efforts to bring that suspect.
Bring the guy back. Are we going to wait for SERAP again to sue them? Because it's looking like that's what we do now. The particular agency that is meant to be treating this is taking it lightly and trying to deny. It still comes down to what we're talking about. I really don't get why we have agencies that are meant to uphold the law, and what they want to do is to deny that there's some things that are going on first. Another thing here is he's saying that until he gets to the office, he doesn't have the information. You expect that even if he's not in the office, there should be somebody there to give the media the information. We need information at every point in time.
Besides that, they need to get the suspect really so they can, prosecute the case.
Exactly, and that's when we can actually believe that the law works.
Thank you very much, Ayo. Next story from Premium Times newspaper. New SSS DG Matthew Seiyefa, Abba Kyari on warpath as plots to reinstate Lawal Daura thickens. Now, recall that just a month ago, the acting president at the time, who's the vice president now, fired the Abba Kyari, rather the Lawal Daura, the former DG of the SSS, saying that he was colluding with politicians to that was not supposed to be under. He was not supposed to be under the authority, but he was just going into meddling into political matters. Cheta, when we look at the story, it seems as if the new chief of staff rather, Abba Kyari, is trying to sway decisions. No, the chief of staff is trying. It seems as if he's trying to sway the decisions or you use up the office of the new DG. What do you think?
Well, first things first, I think it's important to reiterate without equivocation that Lawal Daura was a really bad head of the TSS. He was insubordinate to the vice president on numerous occasions.
Yeah.
I think his biggest offense was the many people who disappeared under his watch, and the fact that disappeared into detention, and the fact that he did not consider it fit to obey court orders when they went against what he wanted. In this, I think one thing I'll recommend if you can find it, in November 2000, Newswatch published a piece, very lengthy piece, In Search of Justice, in which they profiled the NSO, which was the organization that eventually became the DSS, under Daura's mentor, a chap called Mohammed Lawal Dadi. Dadi was in charge of the NSO, now DSS, between 1984 and 85, and it was exactly the same kind of thing that Daura was pulling off, that Dadi was pulling off. It's important that we understand that operational control of the DSS resides with the National Security Advisor, not the President's Chief of Staff. I happened to be in Abuja when the President returned from his
Last vacation.
His last vacation. Okay, thank you. And the day he arrived, rumors began to circulate that they were going to reinstate Daura. Now, this has come out in Premium Times, and coincidentally, a very similar story came out in ThisDay yesterday. So it's those rumors. There must be something. It's either that the rumors genuinely have a basis, or somebody is trying to fly a kite, and in that case, which means that they genuinely have a basis. So
or it just means that there's a strong indication that has some massive support from the presidency.
Like I said, which means that it's either the rumors have a basis or they have a basis. And it will. I would like to see what the vice president will do if these rumors are borne out and Daura is reinstated, because that would be the ultimate undermining of his authority.
Because when he was sacked, they said it's still further notice, so we wouldn't know really what the outcome
he
was.
He was sacked. You don't sack somebody.
I mean, that was the
FM sack Valentine.
That was the tweet from the vice president's office at the time.
So listen, here's something I want to chip in, talking about persistent rumors. Sometimes rumors are persistent because they have a purpose, not because they have a basis. So I'm just gonna throw that in. But please carry on this whole spat. I'm really not. And what would even make you use such a phrase?
You've taken courses in rumor mongering.
And which is what? I don't understand. No, that's not rumor mongering. That's
All right,
law.
let's move on.
Looking at facts and not suggestions.
From ThisDay newspaper, we'll have this next story. Mergers, acquisitions loom in insurance sector. I'll come to you, Ayo, with this story. So it depends, based on the different tiers of the capital base, really. It seems now from this story, National Insurance Commission, NICOM, they have predicted, bless you, they have actually they've put a cap on solvency capital for the different tiers of the capital base for insurance companies for life, non-life, and composite insurance businesses. What are your thoughts on this story, Ayo?
Normally, you expect that when you raise the bar, you're going to have mergers so that the companies can stay afloat. The issue with mergers, or the good thing about mergers usually, is it makes the institution stronger. So you can be sure that your insurance company is going to be stronger. The downside to it is usually it normally leads to loss of jobs somehow, because but at the long run, I think it's better for the institution. You expect, it says that the first tier is going up to 6 billion, and second 3 billion, and the third 2 billion. And at the moment, it's still at 2 billion for life insurance. So that means that a couple of them could still stay as top tier. But you know how classification is done here in Nigeria. You want to stay at the biggest, you want to play at the biggest level, you'd want to stay at the first tier. So normally you're going to have some measures. I don't think it's something that most consumers, okay, you're going to say something?
I say staying at that top level, I mean, having that kind of amount to control in your business really largely depends on how many subscribers really are willing to subscribe to such service.
Yeah, and of course, before you have the measures, when you have two companies coming as measures, the strongest, you want to go there with a good hand. Okay, so it's going to be a function of how much subscribers you have and how much their net worth are for you to be able to have a good percentage at the final negotiation.
But wouldn't that shift pressure on the subscribers and increase the premium that the insurance companies would require from each of them?
It's still
understanding that right now, the way we are, Nigerians are not so. I mean, how many people actually invest in life insurance right now in this country?
Not so many, but it's better than it used to be. It's better. I mean, a lot of companies already have it as a policy to have almost all their employees have a life insurance. So,
penetration is still about 1%, 2%.
Yeah, but it's better than it used to be. But the thing is, one of the good things about mergers is you have more brilliant minds sitting together and thinking of a way forward, and you're still going to have competition. So not necessarily increasing the premiums. It's probably going to strengthen the industry.
All right, thank you very much. Move on to this next story now from, we have this from the Guardian newspaper. Fred, I'll come to you with this story. Lagos coastal cities threatened by forecast rise in sea level. So the Nigerian Conservation Foundation, SCF, says that Lagos and other coastal cities globally that are less than 1 meter above sea level could be submerged by 2050 if the sea level continues its rise. What are your thoughts on this?
So this it's a global phenomenon. We've been having issues with global warming, which primarily affects like the sea levels.
Yeah.
I guess this is one of those things where I'm not sure if Donald Trump is helping us, because he doesn't really.
But does it really have anything to do with this? Because I mean, we find that structures are springing up along coastal lines. People are building along, waterways, and
yeah, but this is it is a global thing. So it's like the effort isn't just Nigeria alone.
Yeah.
Another group that needs to be aware, heavily pressed upon to change their behavior was China too, because their consumption and their pollution. So we're polluting too. Nigeria's polluting, as the article says. We have more generators. Why are you looking at me like
I
that?
mean, I feel like we should
No,
focus.
I don't know why everybody keeps. I'm just contemplating how to strengthen my swimming skills.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a
I was
very
like,
important thing.
it's
Since we live in
important
a
to be
coastal
useful
city.
because,
It's
because I
largely
live in
local.
Lagos and
Yeah.
I'm from Bonny. So I'm from two coastal
There you go.
regions,
There
you
you
know.
go.
Cheta, how far can you swim?
Currently.
But
In
pollution
my bathtub.
in your bathtub.
Yeah.
But so we have to do our part, but the general thing we have to do is just join the global effort, to deal with global warming and climate change concerns and
and the
efforts.
results thereof.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for that, Fred. We'll round up with a few of your messages up on WhatsApp. Big T sent in a couple of messages. Say, first of all, military denials. It's very sad that people who risk their lives can be treated this way. It doesn't occur to the troops or the citizenry. And he also says, with regards to missing PVCs, the elections are already being rigged. PVCs can be used by others. They don't have security features. Imagine what corrupt politicians can do with them. How valid can our polls be, says Big T. Very interesting. That's why the amendment to the Electoral Act is kind of important. Let's carry on. This is in from Phil, who says, morning everyone, sea rise. Was that not factored in when the city was designed? Ought to have been, but you know how it goes sometimes. Up on Twitter, this one is in from Mike the Great, who says, please, how is it INEC's fault that voters are accepting monetary inducement? SERAP should be suing the government for dragging people into abject penury. All right. On that note, that's all we've got time for this morning for Freshly Pressed. Thank you to everyone who's watched up on YouTube. Thank you to our analysts for coming in this morning. Find them up on Twitter. At Chickster is Cheta Nwaeze, who will be off wandering around again. At Ayo Esho is Esho1, and Fred Allison is Fred Allison. And we're going to get his handle and tweet it out to you very shortly.
In
Yes.
15 minutes, Lagos, let's talk sports inside of the locker room.
Get quick access to loans from Page Financials. Page Financials.
So, madam, this new head, I'm really.
Thank you.